It is Easter 2025, and we've decided to bring you a bit of a time capsule, if you will, from Easter 2023. And this is an episode about when things don't go according to plan. And if I can cast your mind back, Cyclone Gabrielle had hit New Zealand about 6 weeks earlier, so the destruction and flooding was still being viscerally felt on the daily. Plus, there were still some COVID restrictions in place, and that would go on for months. There were lots of uncontrollable events, and really, doesn't that sound like life? So even though those specific events are now further in the rearview mirror, our kōrero has a universality about it that we felt was still valuable and encouraging. And so I hope as you listen, you find it useful or some gold or goodness inside of it to apply to the events that we know are quite literally beyond our control. As well as all that, this episode of Sunday Sanctuary was our first as a podcast after the closure of the radio station Today FM, and we were literally wondering, well, how will this go as a podcast? And here we are 2 years later and still loving bringing you Sunday Sanctuary as a fortnightly offering. So sit back and relax. Happy Easter, and as they say, Christ is risen. He is risen indeed.
A breath of fresh air. It's Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
Breaks my soul and cried. My mind is moving slow. Far from all I know. Give me time to know. My mind is moving slow.
Welcome to the special edition of Sunday Sanctuary on Easter Sunday. E te honga matawai, nau mai, haere mai, whakatau mai rā, ki tēnei puna wairuatanga, a rā ko Sunday Sanctuary. Inumia he oranga mō tō wairua, a I a koe e puta I tēnei puna. Kia mākona o kariaroto nō rera, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. To anybody who is thirsty, please come sit for a while at this wellspring of spirituality called Sunday Sanctuary. Feel free to drink deeply for the life, for the well-being, for the nourishment of your spirit. And when you leave this spring, this puna, may all things within you feel satisfied. And so in this, I acknowledge everyone listening. Welcome. And essentially, we designed Sunday Sanctuary to be this space and place on the radio that would invite you into reflection, into nourishment, into being present, I think, with yourself and having a moment of, peace and space. And since we launched and released our first 6 shows, Today FM has ceased to exist. And funnily enough, our Easter Sunday show and everything we had prepared was ready to go, and our theme was when things don't go as expected. Ba-ba! And here they are. They haven't gone as expected. So we have decided to put this show together for you and to offer it up as a way of saying thank you for being with us on the journey, and as a way of holding on to hope, whether Sunday Sanctuary finds a new home or whether we make it and just pop it onto platforms and, let it take a life of its own. Whatever comes, we are offering you this today with our aroha, love and gratitude, and as a way of reflecting on the truth that life doesn't go as expected. So join us as we journey through this Easter Sunday together.
Awe, wonder, surprise, incredulity, admiration, marvel at the world we live in. It's Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
And it's very lovely to have a little bit of awe in our lives. And my favourite awes that we've done so far are the unique nose print of a dog, the fact that we could, like our fingerprint, identify our dogs with their nose prints, and with the transformation that happens at birth of a human heart that goes from taking oxygen from a liquid to taking oxygen from the atmosphere itself. Today we're talking about our emotions, and this is a little piece that you can find on the internet called Are Your Emotions emotions worth catching, and it's from MBA and PhD candidate Shade Zahrai. And have a listen to this.
Perhaps the most stunning discovery in relatively recent behavioural neuroscience is that we all have mirror neurons in dispersed areas of our brain. And these mirror neurons are constantly paying attention to other people and their emotional state. Once it identifies the emotional state of someone else, guess what? It mirrors it, it mimics it, and then we feel it too. It's called emotional contagion. This is why stress can be contagious. If you go home to your family and you're stressed, you might notice that they become a little stressed too. Or if you go home and a family member is stressed, you can't help but feel it rub off onto you. But similarly, it works for the positive side of the emotional chart too. If you're showing up energized, pragmatically optimistic, enthused, others will actually catch that.
So now, that is for 45 seconds of somebody's discovery about these incredible mirror neurons that pay attention to others. And when you think about it, how much of our lives do we spend wondering what other people are thinking about us? So much of our lives wasted at times going, what will he think? What will she think? What did they think of what I said, of how I looked, of what I did? And yet there is an inbuilt design in us, in our neurons, in our brains, where we pay attention to the emotional response or offerings of others and we mirror it. And that, I'm thinking, is like a source of empathy. And I guess the encouragement that I take from hearing Shade talk about this is that when people say, oh, you know, my husband came home and he was so stressed and it was just terrible and I shouldn't be affected by his mood, maybe we can say, oh, it makes perfect sense for me to be affected when other people are upset or happy, that there is some sort of a contagion. And then in knowing that that is how we're designed, after feeling that contagion, we can decide what to do with it. So how about that? We've got little mimics inside of us, mirror neurons that we didn't know we had. Awesome. What we're going to do now is an examine, and maybe the mirror neurons will come into play here, because I'm going to invite you to take a moment to be present in your body, to come home to who and where you are. So if you are able to close your eyes, if you are able to kick off your shoes like I am now and feel your feet on the wood or the concrete or the carpet or the earth, do so. But wherever your feet are, inside your shoes or on the whenua, just feel them there and know that the earth holds you. Feel held by the seat you're sitting in or the feet you're standing on or the hands rested on a table in your lap. Where are your hands today? Notice them. Maybe you place them on your lap, one inside the other. And take a deep breath in. Ha ki roto. And breathe out. Ha ki waho. Ha ki roto. Ha ki waho. Can you allow your mind to go into your body, to check in with your throat, your chest, to allow your shoulders to relax, to pass through your heart, beating and keeping all that beautiful blood running around the systems? Can you allow your heart to be safe, held, beating? Can you take your mind now to your stomach, to all the mahi that it does for you, to feed your systems with energy? I bless your stomach. Can you take your mind now to your legs, down to your knees, to your feet, for all that they carry, all the places they journey to? And now bring your mind back to your head. And imagine your head opening and your thoughts flying, free, light, curling up into the air. And now bring your mind to your face. Maybe you swallow, maybe you let your tongue off the roof of your mouth. Maybe you relax your forehead. Relax your eye sockets. Feel the breath in your nostrils. Your mouth relaxes, maybe the corners turn up. Maybe you say the word yes. Yes to today. Yes to this moment. Yes to me. Breathe in. Breathe out. Maybe you bat your eyelids open and look around with a sense of wonder that yes, today is yet another unexpected and glorious day of life worth living. I love this little part of the show that's become a ritual for me of lighting a candle. So if you've got one, do join in. And I have a tiny candle in a shot glass today because that's what's available. And sometimes things don't go as planned. So I don't even have matches. I've got one of those gas lighters. And here I go because I can. So hang on. I have a flame and I'm lighting this candle for the very first time. For me, this flame signifies presence because literally I would not leave my house and leave a candle burning or go to bed and leave a candle burning. It says, I am here. And just like it might provide light or heat or comfort, it can also provide destruction. And so we balance these things and we hold them carefully and intentionally because life does not always go according to plan. And I think that is true of everyone. And maybe this season of change, I know that, our experience of the pandemic, our experience as a nation of shootings and floods and volcanic eruptions, these words have been said a lot recently. And you can list them and be like, oh, yeah. But those were all outside of our control. And so we're maybe growing up and maybe recognizing how much of life is beyond our immediate and imminent control. And I think if you delve into any person's journey through life, you will see that they were responding to things so often beyond their control. I had a wonderful chat to a friend and former colleague. He's now the CEO of Parenting Place. His name is Dave. And have a listen to his story. Dave Atkinson, thanks for joining me on Sunday Sanctuary, special edition, Easter Sunday. A little bit exciting, actually, to talk to you because sometimes there are people who are willing to go deep quickly. And I perceive you to be one of those guys who thinks about things and processes and actually, lives quite out of a deepness.
Oh, it's very lovely of you to say.
Yeah. And the reason I wanted to, delve into some of your personal story today is because Easter Sunday is such a mystery. There's so much mystery involved, and it's when life really doesn't turn out as expected. Like things happen and they are literally not what anybody was expecting. Like a dude coming alive again from being definitely dead. And can you tell me a little bit about what it was like for you and your wife going on the journey of, hey, we're husband and wife now, and now we're going to have some kids. This is what we want to do next. This is what's expected.
Well, we all have plans in life. We have expectations. And sometimes those are so fundamental to how we see the world that we don't realize we have those expectations until they're not met. And I just never questioned the fact that I would have my own biological children and probably when I wanted to as well. So we did this very silly thing where we got together with a group of friends casually and we just had this idea, why do we all try and have kids at the same time? And can I just suggest don't do that if you're listening because great in theory, but in reality it takes time and a lot of people do struggle to get pregnant. And some people struggle to the extent that they need to get help like we did. So it was a really big journey of grieving, really. That's what we're talking about. We're talking about grieving what we thought life would be like, doing that together as a couple, and then figuring out what's next.
Okay, so you didn't get pregnant, you and your wife Phoebe. That's not what happened for you. That's not the way your story went. Can I ask what you did, what that journey was like, discovering, oh no, this is not going to work out the way we just thought it would?
The interesting thing about infertility is that it's a grief, but it's different to bereavement, which is where, you have an incident and then you grieve the loss of someone who was in your life. Infertility is a grief. It's almost it's a slow growing grief of this child that you always assumed, or this family that you always assumed you'd have. And as the days and weeks and months go by, this scary future of not having children becomes more and more of a reality. And so it's a slow, drawn-out grief as you come to terms with, we could get pregnant next month, or we may never get pregnant. And in that uncertainty, it brings up a lot of emotions. And, particularly for my wife and any woman who's gone through infertility, there's something very core to your identity around bearing children and carrying children. And so that was a very deep fear and sense of loss that my wife had. And what made that even harder is as these people that we loved and journeyed life with got pregnant, and we weren't, that joy for them and grief for us, and the awkwardness and the discomfort of that, the reality of that you want to be so grateful for people, and yet there's also a part of you that really grieves that. That's a confusing thing to navigate. So yeah, very, very tough and very hard on the relationship as well.
Yeah, I mean, I love the way you've even just sort of elucidated it there with how it's a slow growing, burgeoning grief. It's a grief that expands over time rather than shrinking over time, which is what we hope for most grief. Most grief, we think, I'll be able to take an easier step tomorrow, or perhaps tomorrow I'll get through it a little less sad. And so once you guys had worked out, look, this isn't happening for us biologically, what was your next step? Because you didn't give up hope.
No. So we had an appointment at a fertility clinic, and that was a big step for us, because it really meant acknowledging this isn't going well and stepping into that space. The idea of fertility treatment seems so abstract. It seems so other people do that, not us. And all of a sudden we're sitting there at a fertility clinic, and now this is our story. And every step of that process, whether it was IUI or IVF, every time you walk through that door, you think, surely this won't be our story. And then you find yourself sitting there going, it is. And almost a sense of identity shifts. When did we become this couple that weren't able to have children? And yet that's the journey. And I think a lot of us, when we experience these griefs and these paths that we weren't expecting, we find ourselves on a path and we think, hang on a second, this doesn't fit who I am. And then you have to learn this new reality. And then you have to take each other on the journey. My wife and I were tracking differently on this. And so we had to bring each other, and then our friends and our family. And so it is a complicated thing. And I think, we had good moments and we had bad moments. And looking back on it now, very much shaped us, and it broke us, and it rebuilt us, and it humbled us. And not to give away too much of where you're about to go in this conversation, but it opened another door that we wouldn't have opened otherwise.
Can I ask what got you through those I'm guessing, desperate times when nothing's working?
I think the hardest thing for me was just watching this person I'd loved, my wife, just really struggle with the sense of a lack of control and grief and sadness. And that was the hardest part for me. And so I made a decision early on, which was it can be very isolating, infertility. You can feel very lonely. And I just made a decision that I wasn't going to abandon my wife in her emotions. And when I say that, I wouldn't abandon her towards giving her trite answers or solutions or planning my way through this. I wouldn't abandon her emotionally, that I would actually sit in that hole with her. And so that meant I went to every appointment we had, every single one. I was with her when we found out the news every time, and we would cry, and we'd go for a walk on the beach, and we'd do our thing. we did that for about 7 years. And so, gosh, that was a real valley. But we did it together, and I think that's one of the things I'm really proud of, is that we journeyed this journey together.
Wow, and then that is pretty amazing. I love that sense of just the sense of solidarity of the where you go, I'll go, and however much it sucks, I'll be there with you in the suck. Like I'll just be in the valley with you and beside you, and not trying to haul you out before you're ready, or not trying to just move you along or anything. Just
because it's uncomfortable. It's hard to watch someone you love like that.
Yeah.
But we both had to grieve in our own time, and she had her own journey of letting go of what she thought life would be, and until she was ready to pick up something new.
And so tell me what door opened.
Oh, Petra. So this is such a cool part of our story. So I had mentioned to my wife several years earlier that I was really keen to look at adoption, and she wasn't ready yet, and I knew that. I knew that there was a bit more letting go before she could pick that up. And one day we were driving to Rotorua, and we were in, you know, those long road trips are great chances to talk deep. And my wife said to me, I'm ready to talk about adoption. And honestly, that drive for 3 hours, it was, the way I would describe it is, it was like the clouds of despair and hopelessness parted, and this ray of sunshine, this ray of hope hit our family, hit us as a couple for the first time in what seemed like such a long time. And we started talking about what it would be like, and the process, and what this new family might look like. And I get emotional thinking about it now. It was a totally transformational car ride, and we never looked back. That was us.
But can I just say that most couples that want to adopt, that never happens. Actually being like, I'm open to adopting a child now, is the beginning of a whole new wave of disappointment where you never get a call.
Yeah, and there's different ways that you can bring a child that isn't your biological child into your family. And obviously, in Te Ao Māori, there's whānau, which is really common. There's foster care, and there are 6,000 children in care in New Zealand that need wonderful, stable homes. There's a version of foster care which is a more permanent solution. And then there's international adoption, and then there's local adoption. So we chose the local adoption route first, and that's very hard to adopt because there's very few children that get adopted from New Zealand. But I know a lot of people in our position who have been unsuccessful there have gone to international adoption or foster care. We were very, very lucky that through the local system, through Oranga Tamariki, we were chosen by a mum and a father, and our little boy came home. So I was sitting at work, and I got a call from my social worker on a Monday, and he said, Dave, this is the call you've been waiting for. And I met Harley that afternoon, and on Friday I was bringing him home in a baby capsule that I borrowed from a friend.
Wow. Mum and Dad.
Yeah.
Just
instant.
like that.
There's one we prepared earlier.
Oh, so good. I've seen photos of Harley. He looks like you guys. It's amazing.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, he's such a cool little dude. And, the reality is, as soon as this little person comes home, we're in the same boat as every other family. Here's a new individual, unique human being that we have to fall in love with, get to know. He needs to fall in love with us and get to know us. And, I've worked in and around parenting for a long time, and you can know all the theory, but my goodness, when this little thing pops up and
whole person.
It's a real person.
A real person with their own personality.
Yeah, and then begins another journey of putting down your expectations of what you thought your family and what you thought this child would be like, and actually learning to love the child that you have, and being who that child needs you to be as a parent. That's the goal, whether they're adopted, fostered, or your own biological kids.
And plot twist, you've adopted another child.
We have. So second time round, we wanted to grow our family, and it's quite confronting when you adopt because they ask you lots of questions about the types of medical, emotional, or psychological challenges, physical, that you would consider. So you have to answer questions around disability, history of mental health, drug use during pregnancy, all these different questions. And second time round, we decided that we would trust that my wife and I had enough. And we felt really, because of our faith, we felt really called to be a bit braver and think, what kind of child could we bring into our family that we have more than enough to support? And it felt just where we'd been led, it felt like ticking no to those boxes didn't feel right. So we said, yes, bring it on. And then a few months later, we got a call again. And this time the social worker said, there's a little girl and the family would love you to consider adopting her. However, she has Down syndrome. And so we'd like to give you 24 hours to think about it. And my instant reaction was, absolutely yes, I am fully in. But I didn't want to rush my wife, who might have needed a bit longer. I didn't think she did, but just in case. Big decision. And so we met up at a cafe, got a coffee, and we were going to walk the beach that we'd walked many times through infertility. We're going to walk that beach again and make this decision together. And while I was sitting in the queue, I said, hey, just give me a quick sense. Are you a yes or are you a no? And she said, I'm a yes. And I said, so am I. And so before we even had the coffees in our hands, we were all in, and we met Kyla a few days later. And there was a longer transition for her. She had some surgery, some open heart surgery that she was going through. And so she came home, and my older boy got to watch us adopt his little sister and kind of relive his own adoption through Big Brother's eyes. And so we've got a little family now of 4, and we've got an open adoption. So we've actually got a big family tree now, grafted with grandparents here and nieces and nephews and all. It's just a big, interesting and exciting family tree. And we've got lots of people who love our kids.
A messy and marvellous, very human family tree.
Totally. The more people that love our children, the better. So we embrace it all, and we feel very grateful to be raising our kids in this big tribe.
Hey, Dave, thanks so much for giving us a little insight. And can I come over for dinner?
Sure.
I want to hang out with your family.
Yeah, they're the best.
Oh, hey, thank you so much for taking this time and for, just giving us a little insight. I know that a kōrero like this can't do your story justice, but I hear the honouring and the mana that you have and the aroha you have for your whānau, just that expansive way of living in radical acceptance and, adventure.
Yeah, well, thanks for letting me share the story. I love it. I feel very, very lucky.
Sunday Sanctuary, a reset for your soul.
I like hearing people's journeys. On the surface, we're all pretty much like, hi, how are you? I'm fine, thank you. How are you? Good. And we can't go there with everyone all the time, but it's so good to go there with some people sometimes. So for you and for the story that you carry and for the things that happen in your life that are unexpected, I hope you find wonderful partners to journey alongside you. Can I say thank you for the messages of love and support that we've received from our Instagram community, especially since the news of Today FM shutting down. And I'd love to share some of them now. Caroline said, I loved each post. There was always something to take away, think on, absorb. Thanks for all your love and effort. Michelle said, I'm so sorry to know that Sunday Sanctuary will be no more. Surprise! Special edition. I tuned in each week and I will miss it. However, I take away a couple of reminders, a book of liturgies and a poster of Ha ki roto, ha ki waho. Thank you. Such sad news for the team at Today FM, for you and for the Sunday Sanctuary team, grieving with you for a beautifully curated space of peace, refuge and aroha. And honestly, you meeting us in our loss and in our unexpected happening of a whole station disappearing within a matter of hours was keenly felt and appreciated. Philippa said, oh, I'm so sorry, as what you were doing with Sunday Sanctuary was so beautiful. It was an oasis in this chaotic, busy world. Feeling for you all. It was a brutal day. Gabby said, gutted. Your show was totally what so many of us needed in the here and now, and I really hope another space will open up for you to continue this work. Gabby, we have not given up. We are literally holding the tension and seeing what happens in this foray, in this format. Just making a podcast and putting it out there, in essence, is an attempt at finding a space. Somebody else said, please continue Sunday Sanctuary somehow. It was always the highlight of my week. Another said, as a person whose husband has recently lost his job, I know the brutal impact, especially on the spirit this has. I love the phrase, redirecting hopes and dreams. May Sunday Sanctuary find a new perch soon. We needed it in our lives. Kia kaha kala. And finally, Kelly said, so sad. I loved listening to you all and all that was Sunday Sanctuary. I have an alarm on my phone each morning that says, ha ki roto, ha ki waho. Thank you for your mahi. Much love. So thank you for meeting us in our unexpected journey and bearing witness to the end of something. And who knows, perhaps together we will bear witness to the beginning of something else. It's at this point in Sunday Sanctuary that we like to create a better trip around the world of our heart, and it's called Atlas of the Heart. Grace MacArthur.
Yes.
I do love just digging into an emotion. And today, in our plot twist Easter Sunday episode, can we talk about surprise?
We can. So, as we always do, we've drawn from Atlas of the Heart to widen and deepen our emotional toolbox. So, surprise. Brené Brown defines surprise as an interruption caused by information that doesn't fit with our current understanding or expectations, and it causes us to reevaluate. Now, I mean, it's not, we all know what a surprise is. But
Surprise, I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
Surprise, I'm visiting.
Yeah, exactly. So something that, an analogy or sort of imagery that I really love about her explanation here is that there's this short bridge when something surprising happens. There's a short bridge between cognition and emotion. So
understanding and response.
Yeah, exactly. And it is also an amplifier. So once our cognition, our thinking brain, works out that there's this unexpected, surprising thing that's happening, we move on to emotion. And the idea that the surprise amplifies the subsequent emotion. So the greater the surprise, the bigger the emotional reaction.
So I guess it's allowing yourself to make sense to yourself in a way that if your emotional response to a surprise, either good or bad, is big, that's like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, we're all catching up here. Like
your body is just like going, whoa, Nelly.
Yeah, exactly. And if you struggle to manage big amplified emotions, you might not like surprises.
Because I was going to say, what about people who just hate surprises? Like, let's do a surprise party, let's do a surprise dinner, let's have a surprise. And they're like, no.
It may be, and that's the reason. So that might be the reason they don't like surprises. So you often hear people, oh, I hate surprises. What they're saying there probably is they struggle to manage amplified emotions, which is fine, good or bad. That's not, that's...
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, so some people might be better at that or sort of cope with that differently.
Yeah.
And so for them to manage an amplified emotion is not too much of a big deal. But for others, that might be something stressful.
Very stressful.
And so she also goes on to say that there's a strong relationship between surprise and unexpectedness, which is what we've been hearing about when things don't go as planned, unexpected. But the language we use is different. We don't use those words synonymously, even though in definitions those words get used synonymously. So surprise is normally used for experiences that link quickly to emotion. And unexpectedness normally stays, when we experience something unexpected, that normally stays in the cognition a bit more. It doesn't take the bridge to emotion as quickly. So the example given was you wouldn't yell, unexpected, at a surprise party, would you? You would yell, surprise.
You would.
But when COVID hits and life gets turned upside down, that's unexpected.
Yeah, and it is something I even as you say it, what I hear my body telling me is there's a lag. Something is unexpected, and it might sit in your head or your body, and it just sits there. It's sort of whether it marinates or whether it just lags. It's like, oh wow,
there's a lot to sort of process and cognitively.
That was so unexpected, and you kind of left with this. Maybe a vacuum or maybe a void or maybe a space where you're like, okay, I've got to deal with this. I just didn't expect that. Yeah.
You don't have that hit of emotion in the same way someone tells you they're pregnant.
Yeah.
Instant emotion that may be good or bad. You don't know. You don't know what you're going to be feeling.
Yes.
But it's you get that short bridge to emotion.
Short bridge to emotion. Surprise!
Yes. Unexpected.
Thanks, Grace.
Thank you.
It's the Sacred Text on Sunday Sanctuary with Petra Bagust.
With our sacred texts, we've drawn from poetry and movies and podcasts and articles from all over the world. And today being Easter Sunday, we thought this edition of When Life Happens and It Doesn't Go As Expected, we'd draw from the sacred text of the Bible. And the version or translation we're using is the Message, which is a very modern translation. It's written in a way that is super accessible and conversational even. And some people love the translation and some people don't love it. But this is a passage where, look, honestly, the life of Jesus is pretty complex and countercultural and curious and marvelous and magical and just mayhem in some ways. And you can read the story of Jesus' life, just even how he showed up, he ended up a refugee and then he's like got crowds, hordes of people following him around the countryside of Israel and political enemies and religious enemies and all sorts of things are happening. But this dude is supposed to be the absolute hero and he's had a triumphal entry into Jerusalem. He's come like a king. And then the unexpected, according to his followers, happens and he dies, a pretty horrific death. But this is essentially a couple of days after his death. And I'll read to you from Matthew 28, starting at verse 1. After the Sabbath, as the first light of the new week dawned, Mary Magdalene and the other Mary came to keep vigil at the tomb. Suddenly the earth reeled and rocked under their feet as God's angel came down from heaven, came right up to where they were standing. He rolled back the tombstone and sat on it. Shafts of lightning blazed from him. His garments shimmered snow white. The guards at the tomb were scared to death. They were so frightened they couldn't move. The angel spoke to the women. There is nothing to fear here. I know you're looking for Jesus, the one they nailed to the cross. He is not here. He was raised, just as he said. Come and look at the place where he was placed. Now get on your way quickly and tell his disciples, he is risen from the dead. He is going on ahead of you to Galilee. You will see him there. That's the message. The women, deep in wonder and full of joy, lost no time leaving the tomb. They ran to tell the disciples. Then Jesus met them, stopping them in their tracks. Good morning, he said. They fell to their knees. They embraced his feet and worshipped him. Jesus said, you're holding on to me for dear life. Don't be frightened like that. Go tell my brothers that they are to go to Galilee and that I'll meet them there. And the good news is when a piece of scripture or a piece of wonder or an article shows up and we want to talk about it, we take it to our virtual table. And joining me at the table today is a friend and a reverend. Reverend Spanky Moore, it is a pleasure and a joy to be able to chat with you. So thanks for sharing some of your Easter excellence with us.
Oh, that's very good. Happy Easter to you, Petra. Lovely to be with you on this Easter Sunday.
Yeah, super good. Hey, look, we've just heard a translation of a Bible text in the book of Matthew. It's got a title called Risen from the Dead. Don't know who gave it that title. And it's this depiction of when the women who are so sad, like they love Jesus, they've known him for a long time, they've been touring with him, they've been hanging out with him, eating with him, they've seen shit go down in a significant way, and their guy, their leader, is dead. So they're coming to keep vigil at the tomb because this is a political situation. It's tense and fraught. It's profound. It's their world, and so they're coming to make sure, like there are Romans guarding the body and they're coming to join them. And basically something really unexpected happens. And when I was hearing that and reading it, it really reminded me of some Marvel movies I've seen.
Oh, yeah.
You know, where forces beyond our control zoom in and there's fireworks and supernatural happenings.
Yeah, I guess the nature of a good story. Actually, my eldest daughter, in some ways, likes happy endings. And she doesn't really like any suspense. You know what I mean? In any movies. No pain and no danger. And it's been interesting journeying with her, who I love. She's sensitive. She's like me. I love her deeply. But to say it's not going to be it's not a very good story unless there's some unexpected stuff that happens.
Yeah.
And so that holds with the Easter story that we find in Matthew, which out of the translation you read. It holds with movies, holds with Marvel movies, holds with our own lives too. In terms of the way that our own lives unfold.
Yeah, because in some senses, I mean, what is the unexpected in this story? Is the unexpected the fact that a stone no single human could move gets moved? Is it seeing an angel whose clothing is like shining? Is the unexpected hearing that the dude who you saw your bestie die, is no longer dead, supposedly? Is it meeting Jesus and him going, guys, it's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, and I mean, there's a number of different surprises in the story, in the Easter story. And I guess it's depending on who you are, depends on what part's most surprising. One of the hard parts about the Easter story now is that when you know the end, I don't know, it's like people who have watched Lord of the Rings over and over and over, or read it over and over, they kind of know how it ends. But when you first read it or you first watch it, you don't really know quite how the story is going to end. Is it a tragedy? Is it are they triumphant? And I think in the Easter story, it's easy to forget that the women, they did not know anything. They just thought that their guru and their friend and their teacher was gone, was a victim of political assassination, and they didn't really know how to make sense of the story. And so there's lots of surprise, like women going to the tomb. That's a big surprise for the age. I mean, that's a crazy surprise. The biggest surprise for me when I hear that story, Petra, is when Jesus says, "You're holding on to me too much." That to me, that resonates really deeply with my own story. And it's like, what do you mean? What an audacious way to welcome your friends after you come back from the dead, to say such a ridiculous thing. So that part is the most surprising part to me, is Jesus' response to their grief in some ways.
You're holding on to me for dear life. Don't be frightened like that. Go and tell my brothers that I'm going up. I'll see them in Galilee.
Yeah,
it's amazing.
I also love he didn't trust to talk to the men direct. I just think that's so funny. I just think it's a really funny story. And even when the women come back, the men are like, "Oh no, you must have got this.
That's true. That's true. They don't believe
no one's going to believe that. Yeah. So I think that is quite funny. Yeah.
I do love how radical Jesus was. Like, even, his first miracle was to a woman. He had women financial backers. He had, in his intimate group, he had the whole gambit of society in essence, and was not playing the power and status games. But it is interesting that this continues. Like, even you think, like, they're describing those soldiers as unable to move. Like, those guys are gobsmacked, frozen. And the angel just has a conversation with the women. He's like, I'm here to talk to you. He's not worried about the guards. It's like, here we are. I've got a piece of information to tell you, on your tot. Let's go. So I think that I can feel the roller coaster of the Easter story, thinking about how Jesus arrives in Jerusalem and it's so triumphant, and then it's all so bad, and then here it is again, so unexpected. And there's something in the universality, I think is the word I'm looking for, of this story, where what we think is our greatest triumph somehow just doesn't seem to ring true. And our lowest, this is the stuff of our lives, isn't it?
Yeah, I teach at a little college here in Nelson about formation and how we change and how we grow. And one of the things I noticed just last week, I was talking to my students about this, is that in the Western mind, the dream is that your life just gradually gets better and better and better. Yeah. So, and I mean, maybe this is the middle class dream. So I don't want to, I'm middle class enough, but a sense that you have little interruptions in your ascendancy towards greatness, and that's sort of what you're aiming for. When another way to think your life is that your life is an unfolding story. And my students took a little while to get their head around this. But I guess my biggest contrast was when you wake up in the morning, how do you approach life differently rather than this is a project to be managed to get maximum output, maximum success, versus this is a story I'm living that needs to be inhabited, which means unexpected things are going to rise today, some of them very painful. But the question is, how am I responding to that, and how is my character growing and developing? I mean, both personal character and my character within the story. And funnily enough, I've got to say that second one sounds harder, but way more like a story that you want to read and that you want to be part of, you know. And for me,
Way more engaging.
It has changed the way I've approached my life.
So when you're thinking about that, when we think about ourselves as inhabiting our lives as a character, which is us, and knowing that we don't have control. Like sometimes, of course, we pretend we've got everything under control or we can control a few things, but recognizing we don't. How has that shown up for you in difficulty?
Yeah, a big, the thing that comes to mind for me in Easter is that about 2 years ago, I was living in Christchurch. I was living a good life. I had a nice house that was provided for me. I was the chaplain at Canterbury University, which means all the prestige of the university attaches to you, even if it shouldn't. And had a great community I was part of. Things were good. And I got off a conversation with my parents who were living in Nelson, which is where I live now, and it's my hometown. And I had the clearest sense ever where there was a sense of a voice saying to me, it's time to go home. And that was a really problematic, Petra. It was a very problematic thing. It meant probably the community I led was going to die, lose our house, lose our job. My wife's parents had moved from Nelson to Christchurch a few years earlier to be nearer to us. So that was a geopolitical problem. Can you imagine that? Where you're going, yeah, great, you're nearer to us. Now we're going to move back. And there was this real clarity that was what we should do. We should move back to be nearer to my parents. And I had hoped that we'd move back and that my parents would get to be near my kids for a while and it would be a joyous time. But as soon as we arrived, on the day I arrived back, as soon as we walked into the house, we could tell that something was significantly off with my dad's health. And so I had hoped, my hope of this story was one of ultimate fulfillment and blessing him in his last 5-10 years. But what it actually was one of journeying with him through his last year of his life. And I didn't want that story, that was not this. I probably in my heart wondered if that's what it was about, but I didn't want to own that. And so it was just the most precious time. It was horrible, but it was absolutely sacred. You hear people say this, and I never believe them. I just thought, that just sounds miserable. When people say I sat there with my father in his dying days, I'm like, yeah, I'd rather not do that, actually. But for us, at least, he didn't have much pain in those last days. It was just absolutely profound and sacred time. But the two things that came out of it for me is one of them is I learnt my calling to be a son to support my mother since being here. And I mean that in terms of a vocation, a real sense of what does it mean now that my dad's gone to own the fact that I am her son. And that has been a delight. Like, that has been just absolutely amazing. Do you notice that I didn't particularly want that calling? Partly. I just wanted to, Mum, Dad's there, it's cool, she's still making dinners. And there's definitely been a big shift in that relationship, but I feel like I'm stepping into why I was called to come home. But the other part is, I thought coming back home to Nelson, I was coming home to be the hero. I was coming home to be the Messiah. I was coming home to be the good son, the good brother. Right, ta-da, here I am. And what I discovered in the process of my father dying and coming home was that I began to fall apart.
Wow.
I'd bitten off more than I could chew. All your stuff comes up when you come home. I don't know if that's what it's like for you, but all the stuff comes up.
I think it is.
Yeah, and all my stuff came up. And I realized that I hadn't been called home to just become a son, or just, I'd actually come home to deal with my shit. And
Wow.
that was required. And so I really resonate with the Easter story of death and resurrection of Jesus, the death and resurrection of the world, because there was something really significant in the death of my father that I experienced my own death.
Wow.
And in his peace as he approached his end, and not everyone's at peace when they die, so don't hear me dressing this up. He was at peace, and that's a blessing. And I could sense this new life emerging from him as he died, as weird as that sounds. But
It sounds weird.
I've also discovered this new life by walking through something I just did not like. And so those words of Jesus saying, "You're holding on to me too much," I kind of can hear that coming out of my father's mouth, I guess. And so there was a real process of what does it mean to let him go and to remain here. So yeah, if I'd known what I was biting off coming back to Nelson, I don't know that I would have done it, but I would have been worse for it. So that's a story, isn't it? When you call and usher into your story, but you have to inhabit it, even though it goes in a direction that is a surprise and you don't particularly want to go.
Yeah. And what a discovery. What a discovery to recognize that you thought you were coming home as the hero, and that you do get to take up this role as son, but that you get to also live and die as yourself, and with your father.
I just remember about 9 months ago, sitting on a couch, I just broke down, just sobbed, never sobbed like that before. 15 minutes, ugly tears. Do you know what I mean? When the phlegm just comes out. I don't just mean an emotional, I mean a release.
Snot.
It was like 40 years of something. I couldn't even name what it was. Just came out. And it's because I was in this pressure cooker of an environment. And there for me, it was a sense that in that redemption lied. It was like, we've got to be honest about what you're repressing here. And that could only happen by having to face, the impending death of my father, I think.
Hey, have you got, I know that you turned to a poet at one point in this journey. Have you got a little benediction or
I'd love to share this with you as we finish up. Yeah. So there's a chap called John O'Donoghue. Lots of people love him, a wonderful Celtic kind of poet. And when my dad was on his deathbed, again, amazing time. It sounds horrible. It was absolutely beautiful on his farm where we grew up. He was there telling me, Petra, what do you talk about in your last days? And in his last days, he was telling me his favourite rams that he'd bred. He was a sheep farmer. So he was like, let me tell you about Timahora. Now, that was a great ram. So I was there, we spent ages talking about rams. And you go, oh, that's pretty random. But I think he was kind of fading in and out of consciousness, and I pulled out this blessing for him. It's called A Blessing for the Dying. I'm not sure if it was for him or for me. I don't know.
Maybe it's allowed to be for both.
Yeah, maybe. But I'll just read a few lines from it. It goes like this. May death come gently toward you, leaving you time to make your way through the cold embrace of fear to the place of inner tranquility. May death arrive only after a long life to find you at a home among your own, with every comfort and care you require. May your leave-taking be gracious, enabling you to hold dignity through awkwardness and illness. May you see the reflection of your life's kindness and beauty and all the tears that fall for you. May your spirit feel the surge of true delight when the veil of the visible is raised and you glimpse again the living faces of departed family and friends. May there be some beautiful surprise waiting for you inside death, something you never knew or felt, which, with one simple touch, absolves you of all loneliness and loss, as you quicken within the embrace for which your soul was eternally made.
Wow.
And I remember it was just very still after I read that to him. I wasn't sure if he could hear anything or not. And he said, after ages, he said, who wrote that? And I was like, John O'Donoghue, Dad. He said, good. Very good. So, yeah, I think this Easter, my prayer for myself, prayer for you, prayer for whoever's listening or watching this, is that they would face some of those deaths that come at them in life, knowing that actually they're not pleasant. Let's not dress them up. They require tears and lament, but there is often something that needs to die in order for something new to be resurrected. And that appears to be the story of life, whether we like that or not.
Indeed it does. Thank you so much, Spanky. I receive your prayer. May we be brave enough to face the deaths and open to the life, to the new life.
Cool.
So good.
Very good.
I mean,
God bless you.
Kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora.
God bless you too. This is the part of Sunday Sanctuary where we reflect on communion, and what would be more appropriate on Easter Sunday than joining together in a shared experience to reflect together, to, remember that this tradition of communion has been practiced in countries around the world for more than 2,000 years. And it is literally when we remember the last meal Jesus shared with his friends. That last meal was the original Last Supper. And it happened the night before Jesus was executed. And so it's kind of appropriate to be thinking about it at Easter time. Because as that meal was playing out, the 12 disciples, his 12 friends, had no idea what was about to happen. Life was definitely going to take an unexpected turn. They were basically still riding high on the events of the preceding days. Like, it had been a whirlwind of crazy highs and drama. Jesus was at the pinnacle of his celebrity. A couple of days earlier, people had lined the streets of the capital city of Israel, Jerusalem, shouting his name, taking off their jackets and putting them on the ground, ripping palms off trees and putting them on the ground for his donkey to walk over. He came into town like a freaking king. And everybody was saying, this is it. We're going to get freedom from the Romans. We're going to be freed from oppression. Our hopes are going to happen. This is what we've been waiting for. And they wanted an uprising against Rome. They were desperate, and this was their guy, or so they thought. And any which way you look at it, Jesus was basically a rock star. Depending on who you are, he was Harry Styles or Brad Pitt or Pope Francis. Perhaps all three rolled into one. And his 12 disciples, the dudes he was teaching and training, were feeling pretty stoked to be famous by association. So this dinner happens, right? This Last Supper. And the 12 are intoxicated with proximity to stardom. They're in the midst of the action. They've made it. They're in the upper room. And they're with the guy that everyone's talking about. So Jesus breaks a loaf of bread open, or it's probably a flatbread. He probably rips a bit of bread and says, "Remember me when I'm gone." Then he pours some wine and he says, "Remember me when I'm dead." This is an odd toast. And the disciples are in denial. They literally, their brains could not compute what was about to happen because it was against all the evidence that they'd seen. And this is when things start to fall apart. A couple of hours later, Jesus is arrested, he's put on trial, he's sentenced to death, he's stripped and whipped and tortured and crucified. And after he's dead, he's buried in a garden tomb, borrowed from a friend. His disciples, the 12 and the many others who followed Jesus, are literally devastated and they're afraid for their lives. They don't want to be executed too. They scatter, they deny even knowing him, they go into hiding, they are torn apart. And then, plot twist, something truly unexpected happens again on what we now call Easter Sunday. It's 3 days after Jesus is killed, and there are rumours of him appearing to women in their group. The guys are nah, the women are losing it. Their sadness has overwhelmed them. They're just wishful thinkers. And then the story goes that Jesus comes and talks to them in the room where they were gathered, and they're incredulous and overjoyed. And now all the things that Jesus said before he died start to make sense. Life starts to take shape, but not as they expected it. And then more and more people report seeing him, speaking to him. Like there are 500 eyewitness accounts of Jesus after his death. And then when the dust has really settled, the disciples gather together once again to share a meal. And one of them remembers, oh guys, remember when we had that last meal with Jesus before he died? And he said to break off a piece of bread, to share the wine and remember him. So that is the origin of this thing that we do. It's not really that weird. It's just a moment of pause, of reflection, of remembering, and of celebrating that no matter how dark, how bleak, how confusing life can be, Sunday is coming. No matter what we've lost, Sunday is coming. And Sunday is this symbolic resurrection, this new life. Sharing a meal, a communion, is acknowledgement that hope is always present. And whether you believe in Jesus as I do, or whether for you this is just a story, you can gain a glimmer of hope from it. I invite you to take this moment with me to remember that Easter Sunday is a day when, deep in your bones, you can know hope. And as I think about the story and journey of this Sunday Sanctuary, where this is supposed to be dead, this radio show is supposed to be finished, the station is gone, and yet here we are, born again, like showing up as a podcast. Death and life are so deeply embedded, and they have been in Dave Atkinson's chat, and the story of the women at the tomb going to see and guard the body of their friend and finding his body no longer there. And the next sacred text, our second sacred text for the morning, is a piece of actual audio from the funeral of a gorgeous columnist, blogger, and New York Times best-selling author called Rachel Held Evans. She died just 37 years old from an allergic reaction to medication she was taking for an infection. And as her friends and whānau gathered, another woman who was an ordained Lutheran minister, her name is Nadia Bolz-Weber, also somebody who writes. She stood up to read a benediction to close out her dear friend's funeral. This is what she said.
Blessed are the agnostics. Blessed are they who doubt. Blessed are those who have nothing to offer. Blessed are the preschoolers who cut in line at communion. Blessed are the poor in spirit. You are of heaven, and Jesus blesses you. Blessed are those who no one else notices. The kids who sit alone at middle school lunch tables. The laundry guys at the hospital. The sex workers and the night shift street sweepers. The closeted. The teens who have to figure out ways to hide the new cuts on their arms. Blessed are the meek. You are of heaven, and Jesus blesses you. Blessed are they who have loved enough to know what loss feels like. Blessed are the mothers of the miscarried. Blessed are they who can't fall apart because they have to keep it together for everyone else. Blessed are those who still aren't over it yet. Blessed are those who mourn. You are of heaven, and Jesus blesses you.
And just imagine, as I do, that you can find yourself in that benediction, that there are faces, your face or the face of people that you love in those words. And we came across that benediction at a staff meeting, actually, and one of our colleagues, Josh, read it, and we just cried. We just heard and saw ourselves and others who need to be blessed, who need to know blessing in those words. And they were said over the funeral of a loved one. And so I guess we offer them to you today. And Easter Sunday is, this profound kind of moment of joy where in our story Jesus rises from the dead, and yet the death still happened. And so we carry the deaths and we carry the lives of the people we love and of our own life. And receive that blessing today, she says as the tears roll down her cheeks. I hope that you, can find a moment of sadness that nourishes you, a moment of weeping that restores you, because it does, to face the whole of our humanity. And I'm going to leave you with a benediction from us here at Sunday Sanctuary. And we have taken it from The Lives We Actually Have, a book by Kate Bowler and Jessica Ritchie. And it's a blessing for the lives we didn't choose, those lives when unexpected things happen. Blessed are we in the tender place between curiosity and dread, we who wonder how to be whole when dreams have disappeared and part of us with them, where mastery, control, determination, bootstrapping and grit are consigned to the realm of before, where most of the world lives. In the fever dream that promises infinite choices, unlimited progress, best life now. Blessed are we in the after, forced into stories we never would have written, far outside of answers to questions we even know to ask. God, show us a glimmer of possibility in this new constraint, that small truths will be given back to us. We are held. We are safe. We are loved. We are loved. We are loved. So I bless you this Easter Sunday. Wherever you find yourself in Aotearoa or the world, may you go forward knowing that indeed you are loved. This was Sunday Sanctuary, Easter Sunday special edition. Thanks for having us in your head, heart and ears today.